Before we hit taxes, I just want to get your sense of the government shutdown and what you think may or may not happen here, given that it looks like we have a deal of some sort.
Well, certainly the news this morning suggests that Congress has a deal. I certainly hope if Congress has a deal, the president doesn't choose to shut the government down again. It didn't work out so well the last time. It's never worked out well. It's irresponsible. And if Congress has a deal and it's a fair deal, the president should sign it.
On the tax front, you know, we've been talking a lot about what feels like a lurch to the left by the Democratic Party, whether it's Elizabeth Warren's broader wealth tax, whether it's AOC's 70% tax, Bernie Sanders' 77% state tax. Marco Rubio commenting this morning, he's on the other side of this, but on buybacks. Not so far away, by the way, from where Schumer and Bernie Sanders were a week ago on buybacks. What do you think's happening here?
Look, I think there is something happening here, and it's reflected in the broad unhappiness with the tax bill that was enacted just under 2 years ago. It's not done great things for the economy. It hasn't unleashed big investment. It hasn't produced great jobs for people. And it has produced things like buybacks. Now, it's not a big surprise to me. I think I sat here on this show and predicted that that would be what happened if you cut the capital gains rate as much as they did. The problem we have in the country is that we have growing income inequality. We have a fear that opportunity in the future is not going to be there for people to get into and stay in the middle class. And we have policies that aren't dealing with it.
But just to go back on a point, you're saying that you think it was unleashed by the tax changes of last year. I mean, I look at this as something that was unleashed by the Great Recession of over a decade ago.
That's a fair point.
And median housing income dropping pretty drastically. I look at this as more than a decade.
I agree with that, Becky, and I actually think if you look at the continuum, coming out of the financial crisis, the right government response would have been to do something to address the underlying problems of inequality. What we had was a policy that doubled down on inequality.
You mean by the Fed lowering rates and really creating an equity boom?
Look, I think that there's no question that low rates led to higher asset values, but it also helped to end the recession and avoid a depression.
Square this
and that created a lot of jobs.
Square this one piece of it. We are, and President Trump talked about it during the State of the Union, you look at the jobs numbers on a monthly basis, and you have to be awed, frankly.
Or take GDP.
I think it's hard not to be.
Unless 50% better than what you were able to do.
I'm trying to help you,
I know you
Joseph,
are. I know. But
so the question is, given where we are in the economy,
is it a lag effect for Cash for Clunkers? You guys did this?
I'm going to surprise you, Joe. When you throw a huge amount of stimulus on a growing economy, it should be no surprise that you get some short-term bump in
what happened?
GDP.
You threw $800 billion at it, and nothing happened.
And we didn't have a depression. We ended a recession, and we started a recovery that hasn't ended yet. It's the longest recovery in history.
You really are going to look at GDP. I mean, you never had a year of 3%. It probably is going to be 3%. You don't think any of this is from deregulation and from tax reform? Do you think this is a delayed effect of your policies in the Obama administration? Look, can you really say that to me?
I do believe we left an economy that was strong, and the continued strength of that economy is something that could have been predicted. I actually think the risks in this economy for the moment are self-inflicted. I mean, just listen to the things you're talking about.
No, I know.
Confidence in the economy because of government shutdowns. Confidence in the economy because of a war with China. Confidence in the economy because...
You saw a 16-year high on consumer, on their feelings about the future. You saw that yesterday, right? How positive they are about their economic future?
Did I mishear you this morning saying that the market is up because the government looks like it's not going to shut down?
No, I know, but just purely in the most recent polls, that people feeling very good about their financial future right now. Much better than they did during the Obama
years. I think what you're seeing in the United States, in Europe, and a lot of parts of the world is that people are worried about the future, and it's reflected in questioning institutions, questioning democratic processes, questioning free markets. I believe in democracy, and I believe in the free market.
Do you believe in the Green New Deal?
So I think that the combination of things, from the Green New Deal to some of the tax proposals that are out there...
You would sign on for that?
Let me speak for myself, Jim.
Okay.
I think that there's an important debate going on right now, which, in my view, ought to be about how do we have a fair system, how do we have a system that addresses the needs of the country, things like infrastructure, apprenticeship, childcare, and how do we do it in a way that's fiscally responsible? Now, I don't know whether any one of these proposals will answer all of those questions. I'm glad people are asking, though.
Mr. Secretary,
So you might be okay with the green. You were Treasury Secretary. Do you think that is a viable option for the U.S. economy?
It is not a plan that I can speak to the merits of one way or the other. It's an idea.
Really?
What was issued this week is not a full plan.
Well, there were some ideas in there that.
So I think that
you can't reject it out of hand.
Do we have a problem in this country that we have a real issue with environmental problems? Yes. Do we have a problem that the tax system is not fair? Yes. I'm going to look and see what the solution is. But I told you what the test I would use.
On buybacks specifically, because there was a headline earlier this morning we've talked a lot about with Marco Rubio, putting out a plan effectively to tax buybacks the way dividends are taxed. The idea being that effectively his argument that buybacks are incentivized over dividends, which arguably is true given the way the system works. I'm not sure how you would execute that tax, but if I put you back in the chair of being the Treasury Secretary, is that something that you think would be a net benefit economically to the country?
Look, buybacks are not in and of themselves good or bad. They can be overdone, and you can have policies that create incentives to overdo them. I think right now we're in a situation where the policy environment is encouraging bad outcomes. You know, when I was secretary, we saw that with inversions. I tried to deal with it on inversions. I don't think the tax code, I don't think government should tell businesses exactly how to do their business.
The question is,
but we shouldn't make it attractive to do things that we think are wrong.
But here's the great conundrum. Today, it's not so clear to me that if the money wasn't going back into a buyback, that somehow it would automatically go into some kind of capital expenditure or would automatically go into staffing. You're only hiring the next person when you think that there's going to be more demand than you currently can handle. You're only going to build the next factory when you think that whatever your current factory has is working flat out. And so the question is, what happens to that money?
The gap between the capital gains rate and the earned income rate is really what's at issue with the difference between dividends and buybacks. I didn't think it was a good idea to go to 21%. I didn't think anyone, when I was secretary, was asking to go to 21. We went below the rate that was seen as the goal, 25. It cost a boatload of money we don't have, and now we're seeing things that come out of that differential that are bad practices. So we need to go back to the drawing board and ask some basic questions. It's rare that I start out saying that Marco Rubio's idea is something I want to take a look at. So that ought to get people's attention just in and of itself. You know, if you look at the system, one of the problems we have is not just buybacks in the short term. Over the long term, the capital gains of very wealthy people often are never taxed. Never taxed. About half of the capital gains of estates over $10 million are never taxed. That's not fair.
So how do you capture that money?
So, look, when I was secretary, we proposed, something called stepped-up basis to try and stop the practice
on the estate level.
On the estate level.
Yep.
There are other ways to do it. The workability is an issue. When I look at these proposals, one of the questions I ask, as you asked me on this dividend issue, is can it be done in a workable way? Serious people should be looking at that. I'm glad they are in a lot of these areas.
Okay, we got to go, but what would it take in terms of money for the IRS to do any of this stuff? Because we have all these conversations about what should happen, but we have an IRS that is so underfunded that it almost doesn't matter.
The probability of having the IRS catch things is going down and down because we have a war on the IRS. It doesn't take huge amounts of money. It's hundreds of millions, not billions of dollars.
Former Treasury Secretary Jack Lew, thank you, sir.
Good to be with you.
See you. Appreciate it.
You really didn't answer me about the Green New Deal, Mr. Secretary. And just saying that you're for a clean environment, but I'm not sure of the actual detail. I know you know some of the details of the Green New Deal.
No, actually,
do you think that every single person should be guaranteed a family-sustaining wage, free, medical leave, paid vacations, retirement security, and even if you're unwilling to work, you should get a...
No, I'm not going to sign on to anything until I know all the details. I think there are a lot of
have already signed on. Some of the leading
you asked me,
Democrats
do I think that there are problems that we need to address, whether that's the...
Punting again.
No, I'm not punting,
I understand that we want an environment, but we're talking about no air travel in like 10 years. What will happen to global trade? This is what your party has in a platform.
You know, I think that there's a desire to describe what Democrats are doing in a way that is not exactly accurate.
It's a problem with the description, not the actual policy.
You think it's fair that there are certain Democrats that are creating straw men for people on the other side?
There's no doubt that there are some straw men out there, but I think people are asking the right questions.
Kamala Harris is not a straw man.
People are asking the right questions.
Elizabeth Warren is not a straw woman. Kamala Harris is not a straw woman. Cory Booker,
I hope
Amy
the debate that we
Klobuchar.
have on the substance gets to what are the right tax policies, what are the public investments we need to make, and what is a fiscally sustainable future. That's what we ought to be having. We didn't have that debate on this tax.
I'm trying to help your party. I really am at this point.